believe we're moving in the right direction. Step by step, we're making progress. Now, we've got a long way to go before we can put this recession behind us. And New Mexico's doing better than many states, but it's tough out there. But we do know that the gears of our economy, the economic engine, are slowly beginning to turn. In the meantime, though, I know that there are so many Americans who are hurting right now. You've got hundreds of thousands who've lost their jobs just last month. Millions are working jobs that don't pay enough to cover the bills. Millions more see increasing portions of their income going towards paying down debt. There are Americans struggling to cope with the rising cost of putting things like their mortgage, their tuition, their medical bills, even their food and gas bills on their credit cards because they feel like they're going underwater. But they're quickly finding out that they can't dig their way out of debt because of unfair practices. And that's what I want to talk about today briefly. We're talking about folks like Chris Lardner. She and her husband work hard. They're doing well. They have a wonderful small business. But she wrote to me last week, and you just heard her story. You know, her husband's business is in Albuquerque. 2 of their children are in college. When one tuition payment that was mistakenly charged to a credit card put her over the limit, her credit card company more than tripled her rate to nearly 30%. And she made a simple point in the letter that she wrote to me. She said, if we conducted business this way, we'd have no business, she wrote. And if this is happening to us, I can only imagine what's going on in homes less fortunate than ours. Now, you all know what Chris is talking about. I know, I remember. It hasn't been that long since I had my credit card, sometimes working that a little bit. You know, we're lured in by ads and mailings that hook us with the promise of low rates while keeping the right to raise those rates at any time for any reason. Even on old purchases, even when you make a late payment on a different card. Right now, credit card companies charge more than $15 billion a year in penalty fees. 1 in 5 Americans carry a balance that has been charged interest rates above 20%. Sometimes they even raise rates on outstanding balances, even when you've paid your bills on time. Now, I understand that many Americans are defaulting on their debt, and that's why these companies claim the need to raise rates. One of the causes of this economic crisis was that too many people were living beyond their means, with mortgages they couldn't afford, buying things they couldn't pay for, maxing out on credit cards that they couldn't pay down. And in the last decade, Americans' credit card debt has increased by 25%. Nearly half of all Americans carry a balance on their credit cards, and those who do have an average balance of over $7,000. So we have been complicit in these problems. We've contributed to our own problems. We've got to change how we operate. But these practices, they've only grown worse in the midst of this recession, when hardworking Americans can afford them least. Now fees silently appear. Payment deadlines suddenly move. Millions of cardholders have seen their interest rates jump in the past 6 months. Now, you should not have to worry that when you sign up for a credit card, you're signing away all your rights. You shouldn't need a magnifying glass or a law degree to read the fine print that sometimes don't even appear to be written in English or Spanish. And frankly, when you're trying to navigate your way through this economy, you shouldn't feel like you're getting ripped off by any time, any reason rate hikes and payment deadlines that seem to move around every month. That happen to anybody? You think you're supposed to pay it this day and suddenly, and it's never on the end of the month where you're paying all the rest of your bills, right? It's like on the 19th. All kinds of harsh penalties and fees that you never knew about. Enough's enough. It's time for strong, reliable protections for our consumers. It's time for reform. It's time for reform that's built on transparency and accountability and mutual responsibility. Values fundamental to the new foundation we seek to build for our economy. Now, this is not an issue I just discovered recently. For years, I've been a proponent of strengthening consumer protections when it came to credit cards. As a senator, I fought predatory lending and credit card abuse. And I called for what I called a credit card Bill of Rights. Last month, I met with the leaders of the major credit card companies to discuss these and other reforms that I believe will better protect the nearly 80% of American households that use credit cards. And we didn't agree on everything, as you might expect. That was a slip of the tongue here. We didn't agree on everything, but we did agree that any reforms we can shouldn't diminish consumers' access to credit. I also think there's no doubt that people need to accept, as I said before, responsibility that comes with holding a credit card. This is not free money, it's debt. And you shouldn't take on more than you can handle. We expect consumers to make sound choices and live within their means and pay what they owe in a timely manner. Banks are a business too, and so they have a right to insist that timely payments are made. But what we also expect is that our institutions act with the same sense of responsibility that the American people aspire to in their own lives. We expect that when we enter into an agreement, that agreement is reasonable and transparent. We expect to pay what's fair, not just what fattens growing profits for some credit card company. This is America, and we don't begrudge a company's success when that success is based on honest dealings with consumers. But some of these dealings are not honest. That's why we need reform. We need reform that restores some sense of balance. We need a new equilibrium where credit is flowing, where lenders can succeed, where consumers don't find themselves in a bad situation that they didn't anticipate. And this kind of reform is especially needed during this economic crisis. And as I've said all along, it should adhere to four basic principles. First, there has to be strong, reliable protections for consumers. Protections that ban unfair rate increases and forbid abusive fees and penalties. The days of any time, any reason, anything goes, rate hikes and late fees, that must end. That must end. Second, all forms and statements that credit card companies send out have to be in plain language, in plain sight. No more fine print, no more confusing terms, no more hiding the truth. We're going to require clarity and transparency from now on. Third, we have to give people the tools to shop for a credit card that meets their needs without being afraid of being taken advantage of. So we're going to require firms to make all their contract terms easily accessible, and we're going to give consumers the information they need to do some comparison shopping. And we'll require firms to offer at least one simple, straightforward card that offers the strongest protections along with the plainest terms and prices. And finally, we need more accountability. Instead of abuse that goes unpunished, we need to strengthen monitoring and enforcement and penalties for those who engage in deceptive practices that take advantage of families and consumers. And we also need to clean up practices at universities to protect students from getting stuck in debt before they even get started in life. That's important. Now, the Federal Reserve has already issued some new rules that would change some of these practices, and I'm grateful to them for doing so. But I'm also pleased that Congress has begun to act. 2 weeks ago, the House passed credit card reform legislation that follows these principles by a wide bipartisan majority, and I thank them for that. In New Mexico, you should be proud that you've elected people, as I said before, Ben Ray Lujan, Martin Henrik, Harry Teague, who stood up for you by voting for that bill. Even as we speak, the Senate is debating its version of the bill, and I know your senators, Jeff Bigeman and Tom Udall, stand on your side too. So I'm calling on Congress to take final action to pass a credit card reform bill that protects American consumers and send it to my desk so that I can sign it into law by Memorial Day. There's no time for delay. It's time to get it done. There's no time for delay. We need durable and successful flows of credit in our economy, but we can't tolerate profits that depend on misleading working families. Those days are over. Because more than anything, this economic crisis has reminded us we're all in this together. We can't prosper by putting off hard choices or by protecting the profits of the few at the expense of the middle class. We're making steady progress moving from recession to recovery, but we want lasting prosperity. And that means that we have to ensure that the legacy of this moment is an American economy that rewards work and innovation, that's guided by fairness and responsibility, and that grows steadily into the future. So, New Mexico, I know there will be setbacks. I know that this is going to take some time. Some of you are going to continue to struggle for a while. We're doing everything we can. But here's what I also know. If you're willing to do your part, if our companies are willing to do their part, and if those of us in Washington are willing to do our part, if we all work together, then I promise you this. Years from now, you will be able to look back at this moment as the time when the American people once again came together to reclaim their future and bring about a new and brighter day. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. So, thank you.